Hello, my friends. I'm Rick, and this you see a table. I got Gray and White Mama sitting here bogarting the damn space. As you can see, things are a little bit skewered, so my whole table's off and wonderful things like that. We are looking at Keep on the Borderlands. This is Dungeon Module B2 by Gary Gygax, an introductory module for characters 1 through 3 for the Dungeons and Dragons basic set. And this one I bought in the 1980, like 80, 81. I forget the exact year. It was, I want to say 80, 80, 80, 80 is the year this came out too, I believe. Yes. What? Yeah, I'm always sitting here. Oh, yes. Sure. Ain't my fault you're in the way. Yes. What? Now, where's my glasses at? 1981. Yeah, I knew it was in the early 80s. I was still a teenager at that point. And yes, the thing about this book, one of the things that left out is that a lot of my friends also bought this book. And most of us who ran campaigns, who ran as a dungeon master, played out of this book at least once. And in many ways, this is a learning tool for new game masters. And I have said this off and on over the decades that some of the early modules for D&D are great places to start learning to be the quote dungeon master or the storyteller or whatever works for your system. And in part because it's designed from the ground up to be instruction, to instruct you on the basics. It also is, in many cases, actually written by the same guy that played a major role in creating the genre in the first damn place. So his ideas and his opinions of why he thinks or he thought at the time we should do stuff and why we should be motivated has a has a significant input even today, in my opinion. It also goes to show that I hear a lot of new quote new innovative concepts these days, and I get a little annoyed by it because I like to throw back at them. Look, Junior, Grandpa Gygax thought a lot of that stuff long before you found a way to make it flashy, and that's the truth. And for those of the people who know what I'm talking about, and you don't like that, tough. You don't have to like it. The fact of the truth is still the truth. It's there. You don't have to like it. Doesn't change the facts. Just saying. So when we look at some of the stuff that came in this, we have introduction, notes for the dungeon master. It gives you some hints and some ideas on how to prepare and to present the material that's in here as often as best you can. Meanwhile, I gotta have my damn eyeglasses. I just can't do this without glasses. Can you not fall off the table, Mom? Huh? You sit there and you keep it on the camera. Don't step on the laptop. Goer. Yes. All right, Mama. Behave yourself. Yes, and I stopped to get something out of the freezer too. Oh, I can't speak for anybody else, but just speaking for me, some of this zero sugar stuff, that's what this is. Sun-kissed orange, zero sugar. Uh, it tastes horrible. It really does. It has to be, and for me, it needs to be as cold as frickin' possible. And so I stick them in the freezer just enough to start turning them slushy. Of course, there's some ups and downs with that too. You don't watch it, it'll pop out and flow over the table. So I've learned to stick something down in there, like in this case, stick my end of my eyeglasses in there to break up that slush. so it doesn't just automatically start pushing itself out. Yes. What? Hmm? You know, you know, yeah. Nice. Trying to do something here, Mama, and you're getting in the damn way. Yes, I know. You've been at it for half an hour straight. Gets a little old after a while. Determine armor class using combat tables, stuff like that. I'm not so big on or worried about because depending on the what edition you have or what game system you play, this stuff will change. But there's certain elements in here that don't. Right? So they talk about become familiar with the module, then make whatever additions and changes you feel are necessary to your campaign. Once you are satisfied, gather the players together and have them create their characters. This will take some time, so at first, don't plan on getting much playing done unless there is a lot of time available. After each player has rolled their numbers for his or her characteristics, strength, intelligence, etc., select a class, etc., background selection to them if you wish to feel free to limit the classes your players may choose as suits your setting. You may wish to not have elves or halflings in the keep, or you may not want any thieves. At the beginning as beginning characters. It's all up to you as the DM to decide to shape the campaign. Likewise, you can opt to give the player characters a special item of equipment to begin with, possibly mules, a weapon, some trade goods, virtually anything of small value within reason. After you've explained the background, allow your players to begin interacting with their characters. Give them time to wander around the keep, learning what is there, finding limits of their freedom, and meeting the other inhabitants of the place. They may quickly establish their base in the Traveler's Inn, purchase their equipment, and then visit the tavern where they may gather bits of information. That was something that was interesting because in most campaigns, most game tables over the decades, I've noticed that inns tend to be the end all to beat all. So you have your tavern and your hotel all conveniently in one spot. As opposed to having an inn as a separate place from the tavern, which is really in reality how that would work in most cases. It works that way today. You don't know, there's not a whole lot of hotels and motels on the side of the highway that have a bar attached to them. I'm not saying that there aren't some that don't, and those usually that do, it's a restaurant slash bar and not just a pure bar. Just saying. It does occur, but not that often, at least not in my experience anyway. So we go on down here. You, however, have a far greater challenge and obligation. You not only must order and create the world, you must also play a part of each and every creature that the players encounters. You must be the gate guard and the merchant, the innkeeper and oracle and madman as the situation an oracle. It's what it says. The situation dictates. I don't think I've ever seen an oracle ever. Just saying. The role of the DM is all powerful, but it also makes many demands. It is difficult to properly play the village idiot one moment and the wise man the next, the noble clergyman on one hand and the vile monster the other. In each role, you must be cooperative. In one role, you must be cooperative, in the next, uncaring and non-committal, and then foolish, then clever, and so on. Be prepared. Whether the first time you play or the next, the players will set forth to find and explore the many caves of chaos. You must describe the journey to the place and what the characters see and allow them to choose how they will go about their adventure. In such situation, the DM must be a truly disinterested party, giving the information as required by questioning and proper action, but neither helping nor hindering otherwise. When the players experience their first encounter with a monster, you must be ready to play that part fully. If the monster is basically unintelligent, you may have to act and may have it act accordingly. Make the encounter exciting with proper dynamics of the animal's sort, including noises. Yeah, right? Woohoo! I'm never good at that sort of thing. I mean, it kind of comes and goes. You're either good at it or you're not. You either try or you don't. I mean, if the encounter is with intelligent monsters, up to the DM to not only provide an exciting description, but also correctly act the part of the monster. Rats, for example, will swarm chitterling from their burrows, a wave of ice-ridden hunger seeking to overrun the adventurers with sheer numbers, but easily driven off, squealing with flows and fire. Goblins, on the other hand, will skulk and hide in order to ambush and trap the party, fleeing from more powerful foes, but always ready to set a few snares for the unwary character. If all of this seems too difficult, never fear. Just as your players are learning and gaining experience as the DM, Yeah, I lose track, right? Experience at D&D play, so too will you be improving your ability as the DM. The work necessary to become a master is the art. Yet the art is great, far greater than what is necessary to be a top player. But the rewards are even greater. You will bring untold enjoyment to many players as you roll as DM, and all the while you will have this opportunity to exercise your imagination and creative ability to the fullest. May each of your dungeon adventure episodes always be a wondrous experience. And this is Gary Gygax's words, my friends, period. So, how to be an effective dungeon master? I think I've read this one before. Time. The dungeon master is responsible for keeping track of time. Now, inside the dungeon, a normal turn is 10 minutes long. A normal turn is determined. That was something that always puzzled people, and it still does in many circumstances or tables. When they grasp the concept of time, that time actually has several speeds when it comes to tabletops. And combat rounds is a grand example of that. Your average movement round and time to do stuff is a lot wider than what is in combat. Combat's supposed to be at a fast pace. Supposed to be kicking right along. Yes, Mom, it's just me and my fingers. You're supposed to be kicking right along, which is why they're only supposed to be 6 to 10 seconds long. And it's not unreasonable to expect your players to respond in a timely manner or skip them. And now some players will get upset about that. And that once again comes down to the dungeon master, to the game master, and what your preferences are. It is my distinct opinion. If you are sitting around a table with face-to-face play, action at the table should be quick. You don't get time in a real world combat scenario to plot, plan, and strategize. You really don't. You need to act and react fast. And that should be presented that way in your play, in my mind, in my opinion. And not everybody will agree with that. Well, what happens if they don't make that decision? Then the story moves on without them. That happens. People hesitate. In real world scenarios, people panic, people hesitate, people overthink situations instead of acting when they should. And so if that happens, you have 30 seconds when it's your turn, the clock's running. I'm giving you 30 seconds or a minute, and that's more than sufficient amount of time in a combat scenario for your character to make some kind of action. Good, bad, or indifferent doesn't matter. And if they hesitate, then that's what they did. So when the player gets upset, there's always that player that gets butthurt when they don't get to have 30 minutes to decide what they're going to do next. So they want to choreograph everything out. Don't give them that time. And explain that from the get-go. It's like the very beginning when I was talking about the section Gary Gygax was talking about learning the hobby, learning the game. Some things take time and experience, without a doubt. Some things don't. And we can learn things in a bad way. We can learn bad habits and apply them to our games. And then we'll go to other people's table and be completely set back on our heels because we're not used to playing the way these people are. And I'm not saying their table is better or worse than your table, but it's different, and you need to be able to adapt to that scenario, in my opinion. So then we get down to dividing treasure and computing experience. Oh, time. The thing about time is relative. You know, I always make the argument, okay, it's going to take you 2 weeks to travel out to where you think this cavern is or where you think the ruins are. You better take 4 weeks to 6 weeks worth of supplies because you need 2 weeks out, 2 weeks coming back, plus however long you're going to be on site. And you're 2 weeks from supply. So if something's not there, you're out, you either adapt to that or deal without it. And that can be a challenge in of itself, especially if you start becoming more experienced at play and more experienced at running. You can use that stuff to your advantage and to challenge your players. And so a lot of players go, well, I don't want to worry about all that stuff. Well, that's once again depends on the table and what you've decided ahead of time as to how your logistics is going to work. In my mind, is I've always said, okay, it's going to take you 2 weeks to get out there. What we're going to do is I'm going to roll, one random encounter for every day. And this is where the random counters come out. And then you make the decision, did you interact with it or didn't you? And interactions don't have to be combat. It doesn't always have to result in combat. That's a mistake. That is a cardinal basic mistake. So we're getting into dividing treasure and computing experience. Oh, wait, let me go back to the time thing one more time. Something included in timing. Time is also dates. So I've always been a fan that things are linear, meaning that if it takes you 6 weeks to go to this ruin and come back, 6 weeks have passed. Rather, the game we fast forwarded those 2 weeks of travel to and from the game doesn't change the fact that actual time has passed. So things that might have happened back at the keep, for example, things might have been going on someplace else. So if you disappear into a dungeon for a week and a half and you've got retainers looking after your stuff and your pack animals and your horses and whatever, and you tell them, oh, we'll be back in 2 days, and 2 weeks go by, don't come back out there, expect them all to be sitting there. The odds are really good everybody packed up, took your stuff, and went back to town. And they assume you died down there because you didn't pay them to come rescue you. That wasn't part of the arrangement. Unless, of course, it was, then that's a different game altogether. All right, so dividing treasure and computing experience. That kind of goes without saying. That has changed over the decades too, from edition to edition, just like it varies from system to system. Right. So experience points and loot don't always go hand in hand in my mind. I've learned that monsters generally don't carry their personal wealth on them at all times. The dragon is not toting his or her dragon hoard stuffed in a spare horn. I'm just pointing out that what's on them in the field may not be what you would have found if you got them in their lair, and it should be that way. Just my opinion on it. Experience points. Another thing about experience points. Experience points are kind of a kind of an area that can be both a problem and fun. One of the problems is people can rack up experience way too fast. If you're wanting a min-max game where everybody's going to level up every couple sessions or every session, fine. That just makes your job as a dungeon master a hell of a lot harder, as far as I'm concerned, because you're constantly trying to one up. You're trying to one up or upstage the current adventure to account for all the new growth that the characters are getting. I think that is probably a mistake in most encounters, in my mind. So, game systems that don't have this kind of tree for advancing experience points and leveling up are just as fun. And a lot of those game systems, well, they have ways for you to add additional skills, to improve your skills, your stats, things like this. Generally speaking, once you've reached the quote class that you got, that's where you're at. Where you doing, Mama? I don't want you rolling off on my lap. Okay. Preparation for use of the module course. Make sure that you've read the material, you study up on it as best you can. Mama, you're not helping. I can't see through you and your damn tail. Yes. What? Yeah. You're just starving for attention. I know what that's about. You keep wanting Mama to bring you out in the living room for a while. She's afraid you're gonna get out. You're gonna hide under the couch or something. All right. So background, starting things, DM notes about the key. Goes in through here. It talks about a rumor table, and these rumor tables have been with D&D since the earliest days, and I've always found them to be quite useful and helpful. And I understand that there's a series of random tables and rumor tables. There's a couple aftermarket or game related projects you can buy off of RPG drive through that give you a whole slew of additional options, and I think that's great. That is something I should have wrote and published myself 30 years ago. Of course, in defense of myself 30 years ago, it would have been a lot harder to do something like that than it is today. I hear a lot of people talking, I got a game system and I got it published, and I'm like, hey, that's great, awesome. Self-publishing is still a good thing. But let's be honest, it ain't the old school way of getting stuff done. And so the old school people who publish these old school stuff went through this standard system of publishing stuff. It's nowadays with the internet and social media and YouTube and et cetera, we can crank out all kinds of material, good, bad, and indifferent, and put it out there on the internet. We can charge for it. We can give it away for free. And RPG Drive-Thru is a grand tool to allow people to do that until somebody acquires RPG Drive-Thru and changes those rules. Because that's what I happen to notice seems to happen a lot when the uber wealthy just decide to buy up stuff and screw things up. because somehow it doesn't fit their narrative or their desire or whatever. So we get in here and we got the entrance to the Bailey, dealing with guards and entry yard, flanking towers, areas of the main keep itself, bailiffs' towers, the private apartments, one including the jewel merchant's apartment, who will buy some of your loot, and the priest and some of his people, which will help, cure you and heal you when you come back looking like you've been mauled by a couple owlbears, which you very well may have been. The smithy and armor, the provisioner, the trader, and the loan bank. One of the things I took away from it, it took me a long time for me to really look at the nuances and the differences. All right, so as the keep on the borderland, this is a keep, not a town. So yes, there's some elements like the tavern and the inn and things like that that are part of the keep that are semi-independent or independent. But in the aspect on the auspices of being an actual village or town, this isn't it. I mean, everything kind of self-contained. It's the same reason why the priest and the jeweler are renting apartments in the main keep itself, and they don't have their own buildings, their own shops, their own temples, etc., etc. So, like the provisioner, the trader, these are all guys operating out of rooms in the keep itself. Yes, the loan bank. Yes, Mama, I know. You almost slid off the table again. So we got our watchtower, guild house, travelers in, the tavern, got a small, can't see much here, a small, yeah, see, I can't do nothing with you sitting right literally in front of me. Yes, come on. Come on, come over here. Yeah, come on. Get over here a little bit. There you go. So you can see, like an ale is one electrum piece, a small beer is one silver piece. Keep a note on the prices on this. You notice that they're higher than usual. If you go to the first edition AD&D and later editions, including the fifth edition, you're going to find a lot of the personal these sort of things are a lot cheaper than they were when they originally came out. They wanted you to burn up your silver and gold. They didn't want you to accumulate massive hoards of it. The idea was that you would acquire it and you would spend it as fast as you acquired it, or damn close. That was the idea. So we get a guild house, the chapel. Mama's sitting on my arm now. Yes, so you're just going to push your way right back in here, aren't you? Aren't you? Yeah. All right. Inner gatehouse, gate tower. One of the things that I really like, and this is why I went back and I tapped this a couple more than a few times back in the day, was that it was a well laid out, a very generic keep, if you would. So it made it easy for me if I needed to have some impromptu stopping place for the characters to deal with. I didn't have to rebuild the wheel. I could just tap my existing material. And that's kind of the whole idea of why we buy these things. Just at least a quarter of the reason you would buy modules in the first damn place is to make use of them in other ways than what the original adventure for it was. So then we get into section adventures outside the keep. After the group establishes itself, obtains equipment, they will either follow the clues in the conversations with restaurants or residents of the keep or set out exploring on their own or both. Naturally, they will be trying to find the caves of chaos, but this will take some traveling, and in the meantime, they might well run into more than they can handle. See, now the maps that came with this, they're kind of a little off or vaguish when it comes to that sort of thing. I don't know if I got where I'm going to find it. Where else is that? Where's it? Up here, up front. Where are they at? Yeah, right. So it almost implies that the caverns of chaos are literally beneath the feet the of the keep, which isn't necessarily true. They're actually set a little bit further away. As a traditional dungeon, now keep in mind that my friend Richie and I had been playing his brother's white box version material in the late 70s, 75, 76 ish. And so we were already making adventures and running stuff this with the very bare bone rules that we had available to us before we got it, the Dungeons and Dragons red box, blue box series, and then of course the first edition when it came out. So we were already experienced in many ways when we got our hands on these. So that it just gave us a lot more wider view on how we should and could function as a game master and as a player. And so the yes, the idea that some of the dungeon is laid out, the caves of chaos, is junior at best, entry level would be a good example of it. What I mean by that is that it's just conveniently packed full of variety of monsters that live in tribes. But there's some other key things to take away from the how this is laid out, and we're going to touch on one or two of those. So we talk about the area map encounters, the mound of the lizard men. Let's go stir up the lizard people. Ain't that right, Mama? And of course, the spider's lair, the raider's camp, the mad hermit, and the mountain lion who loves him. And then we've got, the caves of chaos. DM note: when the players discover the ravine area, read the following paragraph to them whenever you feel is appropriate. Add whatever you feel is appropriate to the description of what they see, but be careful not to give anything away or mislead them. And information on how you should handle the whole area is given before the encounter area descriptions. So it talks about how to start, and then some of the descriptions to give. Notes for the DM: caves, the cave map area, the woods, underground interiors, ransoming prisoners, monsters, and learning from experience. So this is the thing that I harp on. I come back to a lot, and I was pleased to find that the book where Gygax was actually saying this stuff in his own words, and he does this in a number of other publications too. This is the one that I happen to currently have in my hand. Talking about intelligent monsters, even dim ones, can still learn, and they should. They should adapt, and that's how they should be played. Play them to their strengths, not their weaknesses, and not to play them as mindless cannon fodder. Now, there are creatures that you can do that with, but even in those cases, like your ubiquitous horde of rats, you destroy enough rats, they're going to flee from you. They're not going to keep coming at you in a mindless wave until they're completely destroyed. You want that? The undead works for that. But, I'm just saying. So we got the kobold lair. Yes. And I love my kobolds. But I always thought these were, one of the early introductions to kobolds. But I always felt that they were kind of, I don't know, out of place at the moment with the rest of what was going on in the caverns. But then that was, that is now, not looking back. When I was younger, I probably didn't give a rat's whatever. So we got our wandering master levels, wandering monsters, things like this. This goes back to what I talk about random encounter charts. Utilizing random encounter charts well is a skill and a trick. One of the best ways for me has always been to create micro charts that suit the environment. So in this case, we have the Caves of Chaos, which is just a series of interconnected man-made or whatever creature-made caverns, and each one has a different tribe of critters in there for you to combat and compete against, right? So knowing that, you would create a micro, like in this case, a micro chart and counter chart that suits. Yes, we're just trying to roll over. What? You're just trying to lay against my arms. Is that what it is? I guess you. I know. Here's something else, right? Fantasy adventure game reference tables: backpack, flask of oil costs. A backpack costs you 5 gold pieces. A flask of oil is 2 gold pieces. A small hammer is 2 gold pieces. A holy symbol is 25. 50 feet of rope costs 1 gold piece. Monster attacks, equipment table, armor class, THATCO. THATCO, back then it was just the way it was. I never thought it was a good system or a bad system. It was the system. It's what we used. And then they came out with different systems, and we learned to use those, or we chose not to. It just changed and changed and changed. So we get into Cobalt's, a handful of rooms: Cobalt Chieftain, their guard room, storage room, common chamber. Then it goes down to a DM note here. Kobold losses will not be replaced, though injured kobolds will heal. If the attackers hurl oil at kobolds, they will retreat if possible rather than suffer damage. Should they have an opportunity to find any flask of oil, the kobolds will then use them against the attacking characters, i.e., the kobolds learn. And their self-preservation. They're not going to sit there and die just because you want them to. They should be treated as living, intelligent things that are going to be at least self-preservation. So we move on to the first orc lair. Yes, Mama. So you were just laying down. Now you're trying to curl up in my arms. Okay. Well, you're going to slide down there and fall off. Why you keep. That's why you keep trying to get back up again. All right. So the same scenario. So again, this orc lair, and you go through their, guard rooms, banquet area, common room, storage area. The orc leaders' rooms always an orc. There's always a leaders' room. The orc lair, forgotten room, the common chamber, etc., etc. Then we get on. Once again, DM notes orc losses cannot be replaced, but after initial combat, attack by adventurers, the males at location 10 will move forward their number to area 9, arm these orcs with crossbows, and lay an ambush for the intruders. If the leader is slain, all surviving orcs from this locale will seek refuge with the tribe at section C, see below, taking everything of value and even of no value with them, and B will therefore after be deserted. So the idea being is as your characters move through these caverns, even if they have to make multiple trips in and out of the caverns, every time you eliminate a foe, you don't replace it. The idea being is that the caverns will get gradually less, populated and easier for your player characters to handle, not to just repopulate everything. So you went back and it resets. That's kind of what we're not wanting here. We're wanting to avoid that. So we got into the orc lair number 2. So now we have basically two separate orc tribes living in these caverns. And sometimes they cooperate with each other, sometimes they go to war with each other. And this follows the same suits. And then we get into a section where we have a goblin lair. So we have a kobold lair, we have two orc lairs, and we have a goblin lair. And of course, as you defeat them, the survivors will concentrate and concentrate and concentrate. Now we have a hobgoblin lair, and we have an ogre cavern. Right? Then we have the hobgoblin lairs include the common room, the torture chamber slash playroom slash food storage. Because who doesn't like to store their foodstuffs and have their their entertainment in the torture chamber? Because it's all probably the same thing. Think of that for a minute. Talking humanoids. What's on the menu, boys? Meat. Meat's back on the menu. We captured some people. Yes, sir, Bob. Common chamber, guard room, armory, guard room, hobgoblin chief's quarters. And then, as usual, hobgoblin losses cannot be replaced during the course of normal play, which is a period of only several days or a week of action. Hobgoblins are fairly smart, well organized, and alert. If their chief is killed, they will typically seek to escape alive unless their opponents are obviously weak and inferior. Survivors will reinforce the goblins at D above unless their attackers are very dangerous, and the hobgoblins can see that the whole caves are in trouble. At that point, they bail. They will leave because they're smart. Right? You get Shadow Hill, a Shadow Pool, Owlbear's Den, Bugbear Lair. Because you can't have an owlbear without a bugbear, by God. And they have to be in the same damn vicinity with each other. And the caves of the Minotaur, because what caverns, how can you have a good cavern without having your trusty Minotaur who's wearing chainmail or scale mail? What the hell is he wearing? It says here somewhere. Yeah, chainmail. Due to a great chainmail coat he wears and carries a +1 spirit. He's one of your boss baddies. And we got the Knolls. You gotta have a Knolls cavern because gotta have that too. Shrine of Evil Chaos, and then to top it all off, we also have a Shrine of Evil Chaos, or a chaotic temple of evil acolytes and priests and their undead minions. So at the end of the day, what you have is this loose collection of mini campaign encounters or adventures. So you work your way through one thing at a time, eventually overcoming all the major threats. And I learned a couple things. One, that this is basically the Gygax's idea of a dungeon crawl, in essence. Just to give you a range of options and opportunities. But from a dungeon master perspective, as a creator perspective, it's a learning curve to see what is probably a bad thing to do. There's some rhyme and there's some reason to the caves of chaos, but they're not well thought out. And partly my issue is knowing, more experienced players, more experienced myself over time, seeing a lot of flaws. And so if you're going to have, for example, the Temple of Chaos, chaotic evil or chaos or, whatever the hell it was, what was it called? You know, The Minotaur, in and of itself, the Minotaur and his mazes should have been sufficient enough. The Shrine of Evil Chaos. So, having the Shrine of Evil Chaos, to me, should imply that all these other monsters ought to be in place because of the leadership of this cult who's using them as bodyguards or muscle or any number of other things. There should be a rhyme to the reason, and there is not. And that's fine because it's an opening tool to learn. What you're learning is how to handle a dungeon and how to staff one and how to create one and how to run through one as a player. So, non-player characters are NPCs. Nice list of various people. Designing floor plans. Once you become familiar with the keep, who its residents are, where the main buildings are located, so on and so forth, it would be helpful to have details about the layout and contents of certain places. Players can easily see an area they are visiting if you have prepared a floor plan. The guild house number 16 will be used as an example of this procedure. So on a map, it walks you through how to create a location map for anybody who has never done that before. Now, that's the one of many little details we take for granted that we don't think about. How did we get to that point? How did we learn how to do this sort of stuff? And these were some of the early aids from many of us. And then entire generations of players have grew up playing and learning at the tables of more experienced older players who got their experience this way. It also helps explain why there's such a gap or attitude mindset change between us older players, the veteran or the players have been playing since the 80s, 70s, and 80s, and anybody that's in the last decade or two. There's just a huge disconnect that sometimes comes to the forefront in ways that we don't expect it to. Anyway, then we have tips to the players. Now, it often helps for beginning players to have advice on how to play D&D. Many points are overlooked by novices in their eagerness to get on with the adventure. The following points are given to help these players. Most importantly, players should be organized and cooperative. Each player should have a complete information on his or her character easily on hand and should supply the DM with this information quickly and accurately. If asked, as parties will usually involve a variety of alignments and classes, players should work together to use their abilities effectively. Arguing amongst players who will cause delays, attract monsters, and also often result in deaths of some or all the monsters. Cooperation should also be given to the DM. He or she is the judge of the game, and his or her decisions are final. If a player disagrees, he or she should calmly state why, and then accept whatever the DM decides. Shouting, crying, pouting, or refusing to accept the decision only angers the other players. The game should be fun for all involved. Not everything will go the way the players want. Planning is another important part of play. Players should be well equipped, comparing each member's list and balancing items on each. No character should be overburdened or under equipped. This may mean sharing the cost of extra items, rope, oil, torches, spikes, and other useful things. That's a funny thing about the basics. So many, quote, advanced players forego basics. Oh, we don't need any oil. We don't need any torches. We don't need any spikes. We don't need any useful items. We don't need any of that stuff. And yet, there's so many things you can utilize this stuff for. So many creative ways to get in and out of a problem. That's why they're there. The basics are very good. Serve a good reason, a good purpose. And as a DM, even an experienced DM, utilize that stuff. Well, we're going to climb this cliff face. Okay. Who's got rope and batons? Well, I didn't bring any. You bring it? No, we're just going to scale it. Okay. It's going to be a lot harder. Just imagine how easy it would have been. Or halfway up while you're struggling, you run across some batons that somebody else bedded in the walls that you could utilize because you weren't smart enough to bring your own, as a learning curve. Caution is also necessary as part of the planning. A party that charges forward without preparation is almost certainly doomed. Danger should be expected at any moment and in any direction, possibly even from one's own party. Lying and trickery are not unknown. Cautious play will help avoid many, but not all, the tricks and traps that may save the life. Keeping in mind what I said about there should be a time limit on how fast or how short a period of time somebody's got to respond. So for that, we're in a exploration phase, they get that full minute that the game says that round took to make a decision, or it just drags on. But if you're in combat and that's 10-second rule, you got a 30 seconds to make your decision, and we move on. We move past you to the next person or the next NPC. And then some people get upset about that, and I'm like, I don't care. Learn. There's a reason and a time for everything, and this is combat. Be snappy with the combat. You know, Above all, a player must think. The game is designed to challenge the minds and imaginations of the players. Those who tackle problems and use their abilities, wits, and new ideas will succeed more often than fail. The challenge of thinking is a great deal of fun in the game. Then we get a section on a glossary right here, and of course, little blueprints of the guild house. Get to the back page right there. So into the thing. These modules were not very big, not very thick, page count wise, but they were quite full. They had lots of information, lots of ideas, lots of concepts, and each module in and of itself, as a learning tool for me, as a wannabe game master back in the day, was that it opened my eyes to the possibilities of things that were beyond my normal realm. And so some players or some people go, you know, I'm a bit of an oddball. I acknowledge that. I was at a customer the other day, Thursday, uh, taking care of his grease trap. He's one of these guys that whenever you call him to set up an appointment, he needs to move it. He can't do it. He just wants to wait, et cetera, et cetera. So after a while, I get tired of that. So it's due. I put it on I print out a work order. Then I just stop by his restaurant and say, look, man, it's due. Do you want to get on the schedule? Do you want to get it done? Do you want to wait? I'm good. We can do it now, or we can do it, next week. And, what day works for you? I've got a couple places like that. It just seems to work better. So I stopped by and we were talking about some stuff, and he come out of nowhere and he says, he said, you're a very intelligent, well-read individual. I could tell. And that's a compliment I don't hear much. And I'm not gonna lie. And I say my self confidence has taken a lot of beating over the decades. I am not nearly as confident as I was when I was 30 and 20. Age plays a role in that caution. Another thing is the circumstances in life and other stuff has made me more. And it sounds weird when you listen to my videos, but I'm a bit of an introvert. There's one of you guys has subscribed to the channel recently. He sent me a email, and we're having a minor discussion email, and he's trying to encourage me to find an outlet to either run a campaign or play. And he says he would love to have be in a game that I was running, but he doesn't have Facebook. I don't have D&D Beyond anymore. I don't have Critical Role or Roll 20 or whatever the hell it is. And there's a half dozen other systems platforms for setting up and running games. I don't have any of that stuff for a couple reasons. One, some of it costs money. I don't have money for it. Two, it's technology software that takes a lot of power. My little crappy old beat up laptops and the ones that have been graciously given to me to extend so I could keep making some stuff, they're not up to running that sort of thing. They're just not. It's going to bog down or cause problems. Three, I cry about it constantly. My job schedule is bizarre. It is what it is. Every week is a different damn day. And it's hard. So even when I can say, oh, I'll just take every Monday night off, well, I can't guarantee that I can have every Monday night off because it just can't. Sometimes the scheduling just has to work this way. There's only so many damn days in the week. And then there's the bizarre hours. Some days it's in the morning, some days the afternoon, some days it's in the evening, some days it's all three, some days it's a split shift or a triple shift, sometimes it's all night, and it just once again plays its role. And it causes issues. It's one of the reasons I was a fan of play-by-post, especially when I was doing D&D Beyond, because then I could set the pace. I'd have a few days to get responses ready and to handle anybody's issues and to be creative. And I could be typing at 10 o'clock at night, or I could be typing at 10 in the morning, depending on my day and my schedule and what have you. And in some cases, I could do it remotely from the truck. So I could run a small campaign, say using a Facebook. I got Facebook where you can do a video call one on one to somebody. But my hardware, my laptops and stuff are not going to support a program that's going to have multiple, people coming into it. It would probably, I'm going to assume it would bog down to the point where it would be unfunctional. It wouldn't function well. And then, of course, the learning curve for the technology. I'm sorry, I'm old. That's part of it. I grew up with the physical items on a physical table. Now, it's a lot different. These digital tables have their own challenges, and one of them is learning the software and the operation skills. And then, of course, then a bunch of people get ideas of what things should be this, that, and the other thing. Maybe true, maybe not. At some point, I will try to figure out some way to do something. It's just not going to be today. And I don't know. We'll see how this year goes. Like I said, I have no illusions about how things can go south, how bad things can go south. And I expect far more people are going to be shocked that they didn't turn out the way they thought things were going to turn out. But by that time, the damage may be done, and it won't be a good thing. And I don't want to keep dogging down on that. So anyway, I'm this is Gray Line Mom, and I'm Rick, and you're not. You guys